It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving when I realized I hadn't received an invitation. No email, no text, no, "Hey Jen, are you bringing the sweet potato pie again this year?" Nothing. For 15 years straight, I had hosted Thanksgiving for my entire family. Cooked the meals, decorated the house, paid for travel, sometimes even covered their winter coats and gas money. And now? Nothing. I called my sister thinking maybe it was an oversight. Maybe someone forgot to hit send. She answered on the second ring. "Oh," she said, "this year we're keeping it really small. Just the families with kids, you know? Something more traditional." I don't have children. I never married. That was my choice, and I never apologized for it. But in that moment, her words sliced deeper than she realized. I said, "I understand," and hung up. I didn't cry. Not until much later. 2 weeks passed. Then my phone rang again. It was my grandmother's lawyer. And what he told me flipped everything upside down. The money I'd been so generous with, it wasn't just an inheritance, it was a trust, one with a hidden clause. And suddenly, the same people who'd excluded me were now calling me every day. I didn't get angry. I got organized, because they had no idea what I was about to build. Have you ever been treated like a backup plan by your own family until they needed you? Stick around. You're going to want to hear what came next. I never saw myself as someone people should feel sorry for. I built my life on my terms, steady, quiet, and deliberate. At 59, I'm a successful real estate developer in Nashville, Tennessee. I've built townhomes, flipped commercial properties, negotiated leases worth more than most people make in a lifetime. I've taken risks, made bold moves, and earned every penny I've got. But in my family, none of that ever seemed to matter. They always saw me as the loner, and the one who chose her career over a real life, the one who didn't have a husband to bring to holidays or children to decorate cookies with. When I was younger, I thought that maybe if I kept showing up, they'd eventually see me differently, that maybe love was earned. So I kept showing up, with food, with presents, with solutions. And then came the inheritance. When I turned 50, my maternal grandmother passed away. She was the only one in the family who truly understood me, who never once made me feel like less of a woman because I didn't have kids or a ring on my finger. She left me her estate, quietly, respectfully, and without conditions, or so I thought. It was substantial, enough to never worry again, and for a while, I used it selfishly. I traveled, bought a second home, splurged on custom kitchen cabinets. But then the calls started coming in. First it was my brother David. He was about to lose his house. A predatory loan, he said, just needed enough to catch up. Then it was my sister Monica, 6 figures deep in credit card debt after her divorce. The kids can't know. I can't let them think I'm failing. Then Mom and Dad. Their roof was leaking. Dad's health insurance didn't cover his therapy. They needed help. And I had it, so I gave. Quietly, without paperwork, without questions. I paid off the mortgage, cleared Monica's debt. Sent Mom and Dad a monthly deposit to help them stay afloat. I didn't think twice. That's what family does, right? But something strange happened as the money went out. Instead of becoming more included, more accepted, I became peripheral. Decisions were made without me. Family vacations planned without mention. Group chats I wasn't added to. Monica even made a post on Facebook once about how some people throw money at problems instead of showing up. That post got hundreds of likes. I remember staring at it for an hour, wondering if I was the villain in their story. Maybe I was too quiet, too different. I wasn't the mother hen or the wine-drunk cousin crying in the kitchen. I didn't join in when they gossiped about neighbors or made passive-aggressive digs. I just watched and wrote checks and tried not to notice the space between us growing wider each year. I told myself that it didn't matter, that I had my work, my team, my dogs, my lake house. But when that Thanksgiving call never came, it hurt. Not because I was dying for turkey or store-bought pies, but because I realized something important. They never saw me as one of them. They saw me as an ATM with a polite smile and too many throw pillows. And yet, even then, I didn't plan revenge. I didn't want to get even. I just wanted to finally understand why. Why no matter how much I gave, I was always on the outside looking in. And then the lawyer called. The man's voice was calm but firm. "Miss Caldwell, are you aware of the conditions of your grandmother's trust?" I sat there in silence, holding the phone, listening as he read the clause that would change everything. It was the first time in a long while I felt something stir in my chest. Not anger, not sorrow, but opportunity. "Your grandmother's trust," the lawyer said, "wasn't just a gift. It was a responsibility." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the leather-bound folder he'd just handed me. Inside were terms I'd never seen. My grandmother had arranged a delayed stipulation. 5 years after her passing, I would be required to establish a family foundation. The deadline was now only 6 weeks away. If I didn't comply, the remainder of the trust, about $2.8 million, would be redistributed to secondary heirs named in the document, my siblings, my parents. I laughed out loud, a short, bitter laugh that startled the lawyer. "She knew exactly what she was doing," I whispered. It was so like her, my grandmother, quietly brilliant, never confrontational, but always 2 steps ahead. She'd watched my family dynamics unfold for decades. She saw the way I was dismissed and tolerated, never embraced. This trust wasn't just about money. It was a final test, a way to give me power, but also a path to something more. The foundation had to be governed by a board. The board had to include family members. Decisions had to be made collectively. It was designed, in theory, to bring us together. But I knew my family, and I knew what was coming. I barely had time to process it before the calls started. Monica was first. "Hey, Jen, just thinking about you. Thanksgiving wasn't the same without your sweet potato casserole. We should do brunch this weekend." I almost choked. Then David. "Jen, I've been meaning to talk to you about a real estate deal I'm considering. Thought of you immediately. You've got that golden touch, you know?" Even my mother called. "We were just talking about you yesterday. Your father misses you. He doesn't say it, but I know he does." Every message came wrapped in sugary concern, but the timing was too perfect. They knew. Somehow, someone had told them. And suddenly, I wasn't the outlier anymore. I was the gatekeeper. I played along at first, answered their messages, agreed to a family lunch, let them talk about mending fences and coming together as a unit. They floated ideas. What if the foundation could pay for family vacations? What if each of them had a vote and we made decisions as equals? David mentioned a potential investment in short-term rentals. Monica suggested we uplift women by launching a beauty business she'd run under the umbrella of the foundation. My mother said it might be time to let go of old wounds and have the whole family stay at my lake house for a weekend of healing. None of them asked what I wanted. None asked what Grandma wanted. They assumed I'd hand them power because they shared my last name. That's when the resentment finally started to boil, not because they wanted a piece of the pie, but because they thought I owed them the whole kitchen. For years, I'd paid their debts, bought their peace, tried to earn their respect. And now that there were millions at stake, they acted like they'd always been by my side. I stood in my kitchen one night, reading the trust documents again, sipping wine, and staring out over the deck where I'd hosted countless Thanksgivings. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the deep aching loneliness of being needed but never wanted. I could have shut the whole thing down, refused to establish the foundation, let the money be divided up in ways I knew would lead to waste and infighting. But that would have been reactive, and I was done reacting. It was time to lead, not with revenge, but with rules. Not to punish, but to awaken. I called the lawyer the next morning. "I'm going to honor the trust," I told him, "but I'm doing it my way." He paused. "Your way?" "Yes," I said. "If they want a seat at the table, they're going to have to build the table with me." I meant it when I told the lawyer I'd honor the trust, but on my terms. This wasn't going to be some feel-good family reunion disguised as a foundation. I wasn't going to let decades of manipulation and passive aggression take root in something my grandmother had built with purpose. The old Jen might have caved, might have bent over backwards to keep the peace. Not this time. I hired a nonprofit governance consultant, Angela, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had helped build dozens of family-led foundations. I liked her immediately. She didn't flinch when I explained my situation. "You want to build something sustainable," she said. "Not a vanity project, not a cash cow." Exactly. Together, we crafted the bylaws. Every board member, myself included, would have to complete a certified financial literacy course, no exceptions. Each member would contribute 40 hours of documented community service per year before gaining voting rights. All disbursements had to be approved through structured quarterly meetings with transparent minutes and third-party oversight. If any member failed to meet the participation requirements for 2 consecutive quarters, their board privileges would be suspended until they were reinstated through compliance. The structure wasn't just about gatekeeping, it was about responsibility. If they wanted to call themselves stewards of the Caldwell legacy, they had to earn it. 2 weeks before the official foundation launch, I sent out personalized letters to each family member, inviting them to apply for a board position. Not one of them called to say thank you. Instead, the group chat exploded. Monica: "Jen, this is offensive. We're family. You're treating us like interns at some corporate charity." David: "I thought we were building this together. Now it feels like you're just playing boss." Mom: "Sweetheart, this isn't what your grandmother would have wanted. Why make it so complicated?" But I knew better. My grandmother had wanted this. That's why she structured it the way she did. She'd left me the framework and the choice to rise or fold. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence speak for itself. When the application deadline passed, only 2 family members had submitted their paperwork. David's oldest daughter, Emily, 26, a social worker, and my cousin Jacob, who'd spent the last year working with veterans. Both of them had written heartfelt statements about why they wanted to serve. Neither mentioned the money. Neither complained about the requirements. Everyone else? Silent. Or worse, resentful. At that point, I could have easily moved forward with just Emily and Jacob. But something in me wanted closure. I scheduled a video meeting and invited all of them. Every single person showed up, faces stiff, voices flat, some pretending to be cheerful, others refusing to speak at all. I presented the foundation structure calmly, explained the rules, the vision, the intention. I left the door open, but I didn't beg. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then Monica snapped. "So let me get this straight. We're not good enough to be on your little board unless we jump through hoops like we're on some game show?" I smiled, not mocking, just composed. "No, you're not good enough yet. But you could be, that's the point." Silence again. Then David, who'd once begged me for mortgage money, asked, "Why are you doing this, Jen? What do you get out of it?" And that was the moment, the point of no return, because the old me might have answered with kindness or defensiveness. But now? I looked him square in the eye and said, "I get peace. I get purpose. I get to build something that lasts longer than our dysfunction." They didn't clap. They didn't smile. But I could tell something had shifted. They weren't angry because I'd excluded them. They were angry because I'd finally stopped needing their approval, and from that moment forward, everything changed. I wasn't building a foundation. I was laying the groundwork for accountability, something my family had spent years avoiding. After the meeting, the calls and texts slowed to a trickle. No more flattery, no more fake brunch invites. It was like they were waiting to see if I'd soften. I didn't. I spent the next 3 weeks with Angela structuring the launch: website, mission statement, registration with the Tennessee Secretary of State, nonprofit status, documentation for grant eligibility. Every single aspect was built to professional standards: the name, the Caldwell Purpose Foundation, mission, empowering growth through responsibility, service, and financial integrity. I approved Emily and Jacob as the first two provisional board members. Emily volunteered with an after-school literacy program. Jacob worked weekends at a veteran's kitchen. Both had completed their financial literacy modules with perfect scores. They were ready, and I was proud. Meanwhile, Monica and David went silent until the week before our first official board orientation. That's when Monica showed up. At my office, unannounced. She walked in like nothing had happened, holding a homemade pie. Lemon meringue, my favorite. She placed it on my desk like a peace offering. "Jen, I've been thinking," she said, sitting without being asked. "Maybe I judged you too harshly. I didn't realize how much work you were putting into this." I folded my hands. "Did you come to apply or to negotiate?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm serious," I continued, "because this isn't a rescue fund. It's a mission, and it requires effort." Monica looked me straight in the eyes for the first time in years. "Okay, then I want in." I handed her the application packet without another word. To my surprise, she completed it. Not perfectly, not quickly. But she finished the course, logged volunteer hours at a women's shelter, and passed the compliance requirements by the end of the quarter. David followed suit, but with less enthusiasm. His hours were clocked at a friend's business where he consulted on renovations. His financial module scores barely passed. Still, I allowed him on the board. Provisional status, no voting power until further participation. I knew what I was doing. This wasn't about exclusion anymore. It was about standards. The foundation launched with 3 pilot initiatives: a small business microloan program for single mothers, a scholarship for trade school students, and funding for veterans housing. Each proposal required collective review, evaluation rubrics, and community impact scoring. Emily shined. Jacob was steady and thoughtful. Monica? She surprised me. She listened. She took notes. She disagreed respectfully, sometimes fiercely, but always with purpose. David grumbled more than he contributed, but he showed up. And for my family, that was progress. At our second quarterly board meeting, I introduced a new clause: rotating leadership. Every year, a new board chair would be elected by active members. I expected resistance, but Monica raised her hand. "I'd like to nominate Jen to remain chair for another year. No one else here is ready." I looked at her, really looked. She meant it. That night, I walked home with a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, grounded, not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to. My grandmother had given me power, yes, but more than that, she'd given me clarity. She'd seen what I hadn't. That real connection comes from shared responsibility, not shared bloodlines. That titles like sister or mother mean nothing without accountability. And now, for the first time in my life, my family was learning that too. We weren't a Hallmark family. We weren't healed overnight, but we were building something real. Not around a turkey or a forced group photo, but around purpose. By the time we hit the 1-year mark, the Caldwell Purpose Foundation had approved over $120,000 in grants. We'd funded 4 scholarship recipients, 3 small businesses, and a transitional housing project for female veterans. On paper, it was a success, but the real shift couldn't be measured in numbers. It was in the way Monica started showing up 15 minutes early to meetings, binder in hand. In the way Emily started mentoring new applicants. In the way David, in the way he finally admitted he didn't know what he was doing and asked for help. But just as things began to feel stable, the unexpected happened. Our father died. A sudden stroke. No warning. The news rocked the family. It wasn't just the grief, it was the chaos that followed. My mother was devastated. Monica crumbled. David panicked. And as always, they turned to me. But this time, I didn't rush to fix everything. Instead, I asked, "How can the foundation help?" It was the first time I'd asked that instead of just being the help. The board met the following week. We approved temporary support for Mom's expenses and organized a memorial fund in Dad's name that would sponsor mental health services for senior citizens. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even in death, Dad managed to bring something constructive into the world, not because of who he was, but because of what we'd built. But not everyone handled the transition gracefully. During that same period, I received a call from Jacob, quiet, steady Jacob. He'd uncovered an issue. David had been double-counting volunteer hours. One of the organizations on his timesheet didn't even exist. I froze. The old Jen would have let it slide. Rationalized it. He's trying. Let it go. But not anymore. I called an emergency board meeting. David showed up late, looking tired and annoyed. When I laid out the findings, he didn't deny them. He just leaned back and muttered, "I never should have agreed to this in the first place." That sentence hung in the air like a rotten fruit. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He stood up and left. And just like that, David removed himself from the board. 2 days later, I received an email. His resignation, typed in all caps with a single sentence, "This foundation was never about family." But he was wrong. It was always about family, just not in the way he understood it. It wasn't about blood ties or tradition or pretending everything was okay for the sake of holidays. It was about rebuilding trust, not on memories, but on values. And the fallout from David's exit wasn't devastating. It was clarifying. We restructured the voting rules to protect against future violations. Monica led the charge. She even said, "If we want to grow this, we have to protect it, even from ourselves." It hit me then, more than ever. Something had shifted in her, and maybe in all of us. That fall, as Thanksgiving approached again, I waited for the silence. But instead, I received an invitation. From Monica. Simple. Handwritten. "Dinner at my place. Bring whatever dish you like. We'll cook the rest together." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just smiled. Because it wasn't about being invited anymore. It was about being respected. And this time, the invitation wasn't a favor. It was a gesture of equality. 1 year after being excluded from Thanksgiving, I stood in Monica's kitchen, stirring a pot of cranberry sauce while Emily arranged the table settings. There was laughter coming from the living room, real, unforced. Jacob was helping Mom hang framed photos of Dad on the wall, part of a small tribute we'd put together. Even Monica's boys, who used to roll their eyes at anything family-related, were chopping vegetables without being told. No one tiptoed around me, no one talked over me, and no one asked me to fund the turkey. For the first time, I wasn't the outsider who bought her way in. I was just Jen, part of it, equal. And it didn't come from giving more money. It came from setting boundaries and sticking to them. The Caldwell Purpose Foundation didn't just change how my family gave to the world, it changed how we saw one another. Through service and structure, we rebuilt relationships that once seemed irreparable. Not everyone made it to the other side. David hasn't spoken to me since he left the board. Maybe he will one day. Maybe not. That's his journey. But for those who stayed, who tried, who grew, something remarkable happened. They stopped treating me like an emergency exit and started seeing me as a leader, not because I demanded it, but because I earned it and made them earn theirs too. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up when there's work to be done. So this Thanksgiving, we didn't gather because of obligation. We gathered because we built something worth coming back to. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.